Okay, our next panel focuses on opportunities currently happening in London now and in the future. So please welcome to the stage Melissa Bradley of 1863 Ventures and the Mayor of London, of the City of London, Sadiq Khan, for the conversation about challenges and the future of London.
How are you? That's a little whack. We need to make him feel welcome to America. How are you?
Hey, can I just say that they're louder in London?
Okay, well, at the end, we can't lose people. Right? Come on. So I want to start. We have a set of questions on my phone, so I'm not texting. But I want to start as a fellow Black Jew. We are in the days of awe. You did a video about optimism and hope. What are you hopeful and optimistic about right now?
Well, first of all, I don't mind you texting as long as you're not tweeting.
Okay, gotcha. I gotcha.
Because the last time I was here, there was a guy who tweeted about me. And he's not a fan. I mean, look, first, can I say it's a pleasure to be here, and it's lovely talking to you, Melissa. I'm somebody who believes that, hope and optimism are incredibly important. We just recently, celebrated Rosh Hashanah.
Yep.
One of the great things about London is our diversity. I think diversity is a strength, not a weakness. I think it makes us stronger, not weaker. It makes us richer, not poorer. And I think one of the things that I think we've got to be hopeful about and provides opportunity is how we treat each other. And I've always said we shouldn't tolerate difference. We should celebrate, embrace, and respect it. Yep. But we must never be complacent. One of my fears is we all assumed it was mission accomplished. President Obama, President of the United States of America, and dare I say, in London, having not just a ethnic minority, a religious minority who is a Muslim, elected the mayor of London, and look what happened. In your great country, President Trump, and in our great country, we decided to leave the European Union. Yep. And in my view, part of that was complacency. So I'm hopeful. There are lots of opportunities, but those of us who are progressives must keep on the fight, keep on going.
So let's talk about opportunities. London is booming. You've got a lot of initiatives, Grow London. What is it about you see in London that you're really proud of that's going to move the needle post the pandemic, and what can other cities learn?
Yeah, I'm conscious. I'm in a room full of New Yorkers, but I've got the privilege of being mayor of the greatest city in the world. And look, the great thing about
See,
London,
New Yorkers were polite because we should have booed at that moment, but we didn't. Yeah. Just want you to know.
No, well, Melissa, that's because there aren't any New Yorkers here.
Thank you. I felt it. Okay.
I heard you as well. But I think one of the great things about London, and actually applies to New York on a serious level, is our ecosystem. So we aren't just about financial services, we have professional services, we have culture, we have tech, we have life sciences, we have higher education. We have more universities in the top 40 of any city in the world. We have more international students than any city in the world. Our diversity, more than 300 languages spoken on the streets of London. We're a forward-looking city. The pandemic was awful for all of us. The pandemic was awful, but London is back. London is booming. We've had a great summer. Lots of Americans coming to London, not least Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce. But lots of tourists, lots of students, but also lots of businesses and investors coming to London. And my message to my friends in America is not simply that London is back, London is booming, but don't equate London with what you may think about the UK or whatever, because I know there is a perception about our country post Brexit, but the underlying strengths of London are still very, very much there. And honestly, if you are invested in London and do business in London and have holidayed in London, thank you very much. If you haven't, you are missing a treat. So come to our great city. And one of the great things about New York and London, we've got a saying in the UK, 2 peas in a pod. And that's New York and London.
You talked about the pandemic. The other thing that happened here in the US with the pandemic was the death or the murder of George Floyd. And we saw a massive turnout across the globe around what was happening to historically marginalized populations, particularly Black people. You've been very proactive in London to talk about diversity as a strength. Can you talk about what you've been doing around affordable housing, living wages, while it was social, kind of Black on the square? What are some of the things that you're doing to really reinforce kind of equity and equality amongst the groups, and what would you share with others that's working?
Well, firstly, I mean, people who are here, who are people of colour will appreciate that, George Floyd's brutal murder, it wasn't just an issue that affected those in, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It traumatized black people across the globe. And it triggered a lot of black people across the globe because black people knew, and they knew this, but for the grace of God,
That's right. Could be
that could have been me, my son, my nephew, my sister, my mum, my auntie. And we felt the ripples of that trauma in London. And one of the things I've sought to do as the mayor is to give minorities, and that includes women, by the way, who historically have been underrepresented in key positions, a sense of belonging. A sense that you belong here in London. And it's really important to firstly understand, listen to, respond to the concerns people have, address them. And it's really important not just to talk the talk, but walk the walk. So when I became mayor, there was a phrase that policy advisors already in City Hall had, which is hard to reach communities. And I said, look, they're not hard to reach, they're underserved. We're hard to reach. We've got to change the way we provide services. That means giving young people in inverted commas deprived communities mentors, having people who are successful, who look like them, doing assemblies. I firmly believe you can't be it if you can't see it. Provide those ladders to allow people to make progress. I've got a saying, which is I benefited from the London Promise. The London Promise is you work hard, you get a helping hand, and you can achieve anything. There are too many people, women, minorities, working hard, not receiving the helping hand, not having their potential fulfilled. And if you're a black Londoner, and London I think is one of the greatest cities in the world, your life chances are less than if you're a white Londoner. If you're a girl, your life chances and ability to fulfill your potential are less than if you're born a boy. And I could give other examples where you suffer institutional systemic discrimination and issues. That's in London.
Yep.
And I know the same applies in New York, and we are the most progressive city in the world. So my job as the mayor has been to give that helping hand. So we've announced this year, we've started, for the first time in the history of any city in the UK, we're providing free school meals to every child who goes to a state school below the age of 11. That's 400,000 children benefiting from a free nutritional school meal. We are providing mentors to 100,000 young people who live in communities where there isn't a role model, there isn't a helping hand. For those female founders who have set up a business, and those small businesses that are, Black, Asian, minority ethnic led, we hook you up with capital, venture capitalists, angel investors, and so forth, so you can fulfill your potential. Free travel on public transport in London if you're below the age of 18. One of the big issues we have, Melissa, is we talk about, and we're talking about this week at the UN General Assembly, climate change, incredibly important. The consequences of climate change are felt disproportionately by poorer people and by people of colour, whether it's in the global south or within our cities. But also linked with climate change is air pollution. No one talks about this. Air pollution is an invisible killer. In London, air pollution leads to around 4,000 premature deaths a year. It leads to children having stunted lungs forever, adults with a whole host of health issues from asthma to cancer, dementia to heart disease, and disproportionately, it's poorer people, least likely to own a car, and black people who suffer. So we have now made all of London, 600 square miles, a clean air zone, which is benefiting disproportionately poorer Londoners so they live longer lives. And that's one of the jobs, I think, of politicians, to make sure we help all of our citizens, not just those who've got a seat around the table because they've supported you during the campaign. What I've tried to do is to be a mayor of all Londoners, turning what in the past have been passive consumers into active citizens. And that's how we flourish and we thrive.
So can you talk a little bit more about this ultra-low emission zone? Because climate change has clearly been a big topic here, but we still can't seem to make enough headway to change it. So talk a little bit about it, and again, how did that happen there, and what would you advise here in the States?
Well, here's the thing. So New York's a city of population of roughly speaking 9 million. London's roughly speaking 10 million. And we're cities that are growing. Currently, if you look around the world, half the population live in a city. By 2050, 2/3 of the world's population will live in a city. Nothing wrong per se with growth, You've got to plan for that growth. If every single person jumped in a car, there'd be gridlock, even more gridlock than there currently
Well,
is.
you all have caused quite a bunch of gridlock today.
Well,
for sure, this week, yes.
Yeah, I do apologise. I've been walking using the metro around New York. But here's the thing. The same things that cause climate change cause air pollution. Nitrogen dioxide, nitrogen oxide, particulate matter, carbon emissions cause both those issues. You deal with one, you deal with the other. It's a classic, best ever, 2-for-1 offer you will ever receive. And here's the good story in London, Melissa. So the ULEZ, the Clean Air Zone in central London, when I introduced this a few years ago, in the first year we saw a reduction by almost 50% of air pollution, a third fewer children being admitted to hospital with air pollution related illnesses. So I expanded it to inner London. We saw a further reduction of more than 20% of toxicity, children going to more than 400 schools breathing clean air. So I've expanded it to outer London. So all of London, all of our population breathe clean air. And it's really important to understand that this is an issue of social injustice, an issue of racial injustice. And one of the things we've got to recognise is the issue of climate change. If we were talking 10 years ago, Melissa, we'd be thinking, we wouldn't maybe vocalise it, it's an issue for tomorrow.
Right.
It's an issue for the global south. Well, you're seeing wildfires in the global north. You're seeing heat waves in the global north. You're seeing flash flooding in the global north. You're seeing premature deaths in the global north. Climate change is a now issue, and it's very much a us issue. And actually, one of the reasons why I'm really pleased about the gathering this week in New York, notwithstanding the traffic and the congestion in New York, is you've got the world's leaders, politicians, business leaders, civic society, NGOs, and the like coming together. And the question we've got to ask is, in relation to tackling climate change, tackling the climate emergency, reducing air pollution, if not us, who? If not now, when? And I think you'll see during the course of this week, cities and mayors being first movers and first doers. There's a former mayor of Denver who once said, and I love what he said, if the 19th century is a century known for empire, the 20th century, a century known for nation states, the 21st century is all about cities and mayors. And what I want to do this week is showcase to the UN cities doing amazing things as first movers and first doers, from Mexico City doing remarkable work around solar, to Phoenix, actually, in the USA, doing remarkable work in relation to cooling their cities when temperatures are now north of 43 degrees Celsius, more than 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Cities like Beijing have now got rid of all their coal-fired power stations. Paris doing really good work in relation to 15-minute cities, and cities showing their respective national governments how to do rather than delay.
Yeah. So we're short on time. I'm going to go off script a little bit. So 2024 is a big year for you, a big year for us in terms of elections.
Well, can I just say this, Melissa? So the US presidential elections are the second most important elections next year.
Okay.
There are mayoral elections in London as well.
Okay, well, we're rooting for you. I'm rooting for you. What are some of the things, what is the best practice you want to highlight? What is it that you're going to stand on as you lay out what we're looking ahead in the future? And that could be a guide for what we should be talking about here in the States.
I hope that elections are won with optimism, positivity, and hope. Unfortunately, we've seen in the recent past elections being won with division, with fear. And there are two types of politicians, in my view. There are those politicians that address people's fears. People have genuine fears that demand addressing. And there are those politicians that play on people's fears. And what I'm hoping happens next year, both in London and across this great country of the United States of America, is the successful candidate addressing people's legitimate, genuine fears with hope and optimism. And if you're President Biden, or dare I say it myself, you fight on your record, pointing to examples of things we've managed to achieve with incumbency, then giving people a positive story about our respective, in my case, city and your country. And I'll tell you one of the things that we've got to be doing, and President Biden is doing this with the Inflation Reduction Act. How do you turn a crisis, climate change, into an opportunity? And we've got to do that. We've got to reassure people who work in industries that rely on fossil fuels there is a just transition to renewable energies, extracting fossil fuels from our homes and our businesses to renewable energies, getting actively involved in industrial policy to stimulate the market, creating jobs, green jobs, high-skilled, well-paid jobs going forward. And it's really important also, Melissa, to be progressive. To actually realise we've got far more in common that unites us than divides us. Actually, having those conversations, persuading your neighbours, your friends, your colleagues to be registered to vote, and then making sure they don't treat themselves as consumers, passive consumers, but active citizens. I mean, you know and I know the consequences when you lose elections. You know, Roe versus Wade, reversed because of the appointees in the US Supreme Court in relation to the UK, an extreme deal with the European Union. That's not good for our country and is doing huge harm to our country. So it is really important that good people win next year. And for those of you that aren't involved in politics, get involved.
Yes. Well, there's a lot at stake. I appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to the opportunity of celebrating you in 2024.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to you both. Not just a conversation about London and opportunities and challenges, but also inspiring other cities to do better. Melissa Bradley and Mayor Khan, thank you so much. I want to check the pulse now of our audience and talk about a few polls that are coming up on the screen. If you haven't participated in polls yet, remember you can go to pigeonhole.at and the password is Concordia23. So our first poll question is, which areas do you think require the most attention to modernize the approach to tackling diseases and controlling epidemics? And our polling is divided equally. Well, actually, we have 2 participants. So let's get you guys involved. You do it right on your phone, right on your smartphone. Political commitment, community engagement, innovation and health services, all of the above, or something else. And again, the question is, which area do you think requires the most attention to modernize the approach to tackling diseases and controlling epidemics? This is our first of 3 polls. Political commitment, community engagement seems to be getting the most here, in innovation and health services. So we'll continue that poll, and you can check back on your smartphone for the results here. Community engagement seems to be the most popular there. Our second poll, how effective are the current global initiatives in raising awareness and support for global humanitarian crises like the refugee crisis? Extremely effective. Effective, somewhat effective, or not effective at all? Somewhat effective. We clearly need more change and more initiatives. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to our next poll. How confident are you that policymakers and community advocates are currently making sufficient efforts to address the needs of marginalized communities in terms of reintegration and social mobility? Are you very confident? Are you confident? Are you not very confident, or not confident at all? Again, looking like we need some more initiatives here to make the change. Many of you voting for not very confident.